This is Gemara Makkos, Daf Ches, and for one last day, we'd like to dedicate today's shiur as an incredible zchos aliyas neshama for Eliazer Moshe ben Sheiма b'siyata d'shmaya. The koyach ha'Torah, Talmud Torah b'rabim should bring the neshama of Eliezer Moshe ben Sheima to a higher place in Gan Eden Shalmaila, closer to the Kisei HaKavod, and ultimately be a Milatz Yeshar for his entire mishpacha and the entire chabura b'siyata d'shmaya. As well as, we like our learning to be an incredible zchos, refuah shalema for Tinoik ben Miriam Ahuva, b'seich sha'ar chayli Yisrael. We're holding on the Mishnah on the bottom of Zayin Amid Beis, and we're in the middle of discussing, as we began the parak in the previous year, in what cases when chayiv galus. And we learned from the pasuk of Nefila that it has to be derech yirida. It has to be going in a downward motion. Based off of that, says the Gemara Mishnah, nishmat habarzel mikatoi v'harak. If the axe head slips off of the axe, flies off and it kills. Rabbi Omer teaches Rabbi, Einoi goyla, there's no galus. Chachamim goyla. Now, if as he's chopping wood, a piece of wood shoots off, in that case, Rabbi Omer Goyla, Chachamim Oimrim, Einoi Goyla, so they have opposing shitos. Says the Gemara, let's dive right in. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Amar lem Rabbi l'Chachamim, Rabbi told the Chachamim. Does the pasuk say v'noshal that it slips off me'itzai its wood? Min ha'itz says it slips off from the wood. Question number one, says Rebbe, and therefore Rebbe wants to say that it's not talking about slipping off the axe handle, but rather the tree, the eats that is being chopped. And that's why Rebbe says only case to this galus. Again, we're talking about the pasuk v'nashal habarzal min ha'itz v'oid. And number two, namar eitz l'malam and namar eitz l'malam ha'eitzam l'malam min eitzam mitbakeya, just like prior in the Torah of eitzam l'matam min eitzam mitbakeya. That is shitas Rebbe, where Rebbe holds is only going to be galus if it comes off of the wood one is chopping, but not if the axe head comes off the axe handle. Amar Rav Chia, Parashi Amar Rav Ushtei Migrecha Darshu, and they both darshin the same pasuk, obviously with opposite results. Rabbi says it goes by the Messires, the way the word is written. As we'll see in contrast, exactly, we've had this concept many times in Shas so far. Vinishel ksiv. It says vinishel, which means the axe head dislodged something. Vinishel. V'rabbanan savi yishem lemikra. No, it goes by the way you say it, the mikra. Vinoshal karinan bay, which means it itself. So says the Gemara, the machlokes is the same pasuk. But is it vinishel? Because the way the Torah writes the word, it could be read vinishel or vinoshal. Vav nun shin lamid. So says Rebbe, it goes by the Messias. We read the word the way that it's spelled. And therefore, it clearly indicates it's coming off of the wood that's being chopped. The Rabbanan say, no, yeshem lemikra. We know how to relate the Torah. Vinoshal. Therefore, we know it's talking about the axe coming off of the axe handle. But Rabbi Yeshem Lemeseiris Svirle says the Gemara, is that really Shitas Rabbi? As we turn over to Chesam and Aleph, ask the Gemara of Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef, a Gemara in Sanhedrin we had at the beginning of Sanhedrin a few short months ago, says Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef Rav Yechon, Rabbi Yehuda ben Rayitz, Beishamai, Rav Shimon, Rav Akila, Kulu, Svira Lahu, they all hold Yesh Aim Lemikra. They all hold Yesh Aim Lemikra. Goes by, you read. That was the Gemara over there with the Basar V'Chalav, the cow's milk, the goat's milk, how you read the pasuk. Taitafais, the Gemara brought in as a kasha. So says the Gemara, They all hold the Ishaim Lemikra. Answers the Gemara. Hainu. Dikamar Lehovoi. That's the reason why Rebbe has two reasons to answer up for this kasha. Says the Gemara, Amar Papa, a related case. Man deshama pisa ladikla. Someone who throws a clod of earth at a palm tree, dislodges a date, falls on someone and he kills them. It's going to be our machlokes. The Rabbi V'Rabbanan, it's going to be mamish the same machlokes because the action that you're doing was that you threw something and then it came off of the opposite item. According to Rabbi, a piece coming off of the wood is yes chayiv goes. According to Chachamim, no. Says the Gemara Pshita. Obviously, it's mamish the same thing as the wood chip. Answers the Gemara, dami. Maybe this is far further removed. In our Mishnah, I take an axe, I hit the wood, and then it shoots off. So I would have thought that's one level. It's my direct force causing it to shoot off. Over here, I'm throwing something, and then it knocks something else off. So maybe that's called dami kamash malad. Says more if that's true. When is such a case ever shaykh? Kigoin. Says the Gemara, you know what the case is? The shada pisa. You throw a clump of earth. Umachya legarma. And he hits a twig. V'azal garma machale kavsa. And the twig goes and hits a cluster of dates. And v'ater tamri dislodges the dates. V'azal tamri v'katel. So that extra step, that will be koyach according to according to Rebbe. We continue with the Mishnah, 12 lines down. Chazam Aleph. Hazayre Gavin, there's Shazarabim. V'harag, and he kills Arizah Goyle. Plus Ben Yaakov, Mermushiyatza, so Evan Miyadai. If when I throw the Evan, Hoitzi Allah, Sarashai, someone else sticks out his Evan, Kablar, he's a butter. Says Plus Ben Yaakov, if when I threw the stone, it would not have hurt someone, but someone else moved and now it hurt them, then you're potter. Zargas having the chatzei roy, you throw it into your own chatzer v'haragim, yesh rishos l'nizikli kanes. If the person that got hit was allowed to be the l'sham there, then you get golos. Im lavi no goyli, he was allowed to be there. It's not my fault. Shenemar says the Torah. So it comes on to his friend in a forest. Mayar rishos l'nizik ule mazik. Just like a forest, there's just to both of them. Likanis l'sham to enter. I've called rishos l'nizik ule mazik. Lekanis l'sham. Yatsa chatzer ba'albai. Shein rishos l'nizik. My own personal chatzer. The nizik does not have rishos. Lekanis l'sham to be there. Wrapping up the Mishnah, Abashal Leimer May Chatav is the Eitzim rishos. Says Abashal. Another halacha we'll learn from chopping wood. Just like chopping wood is a rishos, it's a voluntary action. I've called rishos. What does that come to exclude? Yatzava Makkos benoi. If a father hits a child, Rav Areides, a Talmid, a Rebbe hits a Talmud, which is not a rishos, but as we'll see, is more at the level of obligatory. Obviously, backwards than Chazal, ushliach bezdin or a shliach bezdin. In those cases, then there would not be galus. Says Abashal. Asks the Gemara, there's just a rabbim. Mezid who? The first case of Mishnah. Why is there galus? Says the Gemara. You threw it at there's just a rabbim. What are you, Meshuggah? You throw something into there's just a rabbim? That's called a mezid. For sure it's going to harm someone. So why is the Gemara discussing? Did the person yes stick out his head after? Did the person not stick out his head after? Says the Gemara. That's straight up negligence and it's amazing. Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak b'Saiser es Kaislai. What we're talking about is someone knocked down a wall and then it hurt someone. Asking my you should make sure no one's on the other side of the wall. Answers Gemara b'Saiser es Kaislai did at night. Nami you should check his night as well. Explains the Gemara, but says the first white line, you broke down the wall into a garbage. Says the Gemara, okay, but what's the case of the garbage? If people commonly go into that garbage, you're negligent. People do not normally go there. Then so when are we ever going to have the case of galus killing someone who's just a rabbim? Amar Rav Papa says Rav Papa likes it's only in a case of a garbage which is normally cleaned out by night. It's not normal to clean out by day, but there are those who come even by day and sit there. So you're not negligent. Why? It's not normal to clean it out. Baba Yom during the day. It's not. And therefore, because it's his middle level, that's why it says the Gemara, this will be the application of a case that there's going to be galus, even for Zarak Even, Rishos Harab. Continues the Gemara. Rav Ezin Yaakov Oimer. Rabbi Yaakov taught us a chiddush that if someone sticks out their head and it catches the stone into his head, then there is no galus. Because when I threw it, he wasn't there, and then he stuck his head into there. Tanu Rabbanan teaches the Gemara. Where does this halacha come from? Umatzah. Says the pasuk, and it finds. Prat lamamsi es atzmai. Someone who finds himself, he sticks out his head into the path. Mikanam Rav Elazar ben Yaakov and Mishiyatza Evan miyadu yatzi alas reisha v'kibla pater. Because he stuck out his head, and nothing I could have done. Ask the Gemara lememra de matzah meikara mashma. So the way that you're darshing up the word umatzah means it was meikara. Veraminu, I'll ask you a contradiction. Umatzah prat le matzoi shleim garberacha vigal bekaroiv biram vayigal biyafeh. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. I have a brisa that's discussing redeeming a steach, an ancestral field. And it says, umatzah, if you find enough to redeem it, prat lo matzoi. Comes to exclude if it's already found. The original owner already had other assets. Then he cannot later force the buyer to allow him to redeem it. You can't sell a distant field to redeem a closer one. Sell a bad one. What do we see? We see that the tense of the word umatzah is not the same as we're using it. Amar Rava, says Rava, no, this is a chameleon type of word. It goes by its surroundings. Of course, I means right now. Someone who's there in the beginning of Matanami. So says the Gemara, it's not the word itself, but rather the context that we are judging from. We continue 12 lines to the bottom. Azari 7 v'chulu says Abashal only if it's a rishos and not a chiv. Amrei Umir Rabbanan l'Rava. Mimai demechatavas eitzim rishos. Dama mechatavas eitzim disokah. How do you know that when the Torah discusses chatavas eitzim, cutting down wood, how do you know it's talking about cutting down wood in the fashion of a rishos? Maybe it's talking about cutting down wood in the fashion of a chiyuv. And what type of wood is cut down in the fashion of a chiyuv? To build a sukkah, says the Gemara. Or you're building, cutting down fire for the mizbeach. And yet, maybe it's talking about that it's an obligation, and yet, so how do you know that the pasuk is talking about a rishos? Since if you find it chopped, you don't have to cut anymore. La mitzvah, shenami la mitzvah. Meaning, even in those cases, it doesn't blind. It's not a chiyuvis. You need to have wood for the marach. But if you have it, nothing. You would have to do weiter. Ask the Gemara, really? Ravina asked, Yotzaava Makkos benoi. But I'll tell you the same thing. If they were to learn, la mitzvah, no mitzvah to hit them. La mitzvah. The same kasha. It's not a chiyuvis. It's only if need be. Answers the Gemara. Even if the child learns, even mitzvah to hit him. Yasser bin chavinech ve'anichecha v'itin ma'adane l'navshecha, says the pasuk. Where is this a pasuk? Excuse me. A pasuk in Mishlei says, Shlomo HaMelech, give Musar to your son, and I'll bring you rest, I'll bring delight to your soul. At face value, there's a mitzvah to hit him, even if he is learning. Hadam Arav, another teretz, la milsi damri. No. Sheva Israel bayar. You don't have to go into Avaris. And if you're going to tell me that if it was talking about a case of mitzvah, would there be an option for him to not go there? Meaning, the fact that the pasuk talks about a yar shows us that the fashion, the mannerism of cutting down wood that we're discussing is one of a rishos. Amar le Rav Asher di ba'i. Who anytime the Torah says the word asher, it means di ba'i. If you want, it's voluntary. Ask him 1 second. Says the pasuk, and if vish asher yitma becomes tamei v'lo yischata, doesn't become himself pure, then he goes to the Eisamikdash, he gets karis. So ibai mitama, ibai loy mitama. Does this mean if he wants to become tamei, if not, he's not tamei? Meis mitzvah. We could do meis mitzvah. Sagid loy mitzvah. So says the Gemara, and yeah, tachanami de pater. And would he be pater? Of course not. So we see that the word asher doesn't mean it's voluntary. Answers the Gemara, shiny awesome. Don't ask me from Visha Shayitma. Shiny awesome. Why is that case different? Because the Amar Cross says the pasuk, Tamei yihiyeh, he shall be Tamei, mikol makam, which applies in all scenarios. And we continue with another kasha. Ahomi ba'ilei. It says more 1 second, but we need that phrase of Tamiyo yihiyeh. The rabbis tful yoyim Tomas abai. The rabbis Makkos kippurim. So what do we see? We see that the word tamiyu is necessary to include a tful yoyim that gets kares going to be Samigdash, so it can't come to include mikol makaim in all cases, even a case of a meis mitzvah. It says Rava Amar Le Ana Me'oid Tomasai Kamina. I didn't mean from Tamiyah. I meant from the extra words Oid Tomasai in the pasuk. Ika Dematzilaha Nika Diamri. The previous discussion a little bit different. Says the Torah, plowing and reaping you have to rest. Rav Akiva Aimer. This is Pashit if we're talking about plowing and planting of Shemitah. The Torah already says rather. Pre-7th year or pre-8th year. In both those cases, they come to be included. Rabbi Yishmael, he argues, Aimer. Macharish Rishos, Avkata Rishos, Yatziksira Aimer, Shu Mitzvah, Ksira Aimer will be different. So based on the above, and you can see how this is the Amri, very similar to our discussion. How do we know the Torah is talking about a chiyuves, maybe or rishos? Maybe it's a chiyuv. So says the Gemara, maybe we're talking Dilma Charishas Aimer, cutting on the Aimer of the carbons of mitzvah. And yet Amar Chwana Tishbois, it's not allowed. Amar Le, even the Matzacharish in a chayreish. La mitzvah. Mamish the same territory. You don't have to do it if it's already done. This is let us say the same thing. Maybe if he's already learned, it's not a mitzvah. Answers the Gemara. Hasam again. Avagav the Gemara in the first white line. Even if he did learn, Nami mitzvah kavid echsev, as the Shlomo HaMelech has taught us. Dechsev, excuse me. Yasir bin Chavei Nichecha. Hadam Arav Rav Lamelsi Damri Ksira Domi de Charisha Machrisha Matzacharish Eno Yechayrish Av Ksira Nami Kaitzer and Kaitzer Zachdam Mitzvah Matzakaitzer and Kaitzer Mitzvah Lakestar Lahavi. So says the Gemara the same exact Shakvataria, but dealing with the carbon, the Charish V'Katzer of Shvius, Motzai Shvius Aimer, etc. We continue with the Mishnah towards the bottom. Al Chesem and Beis Ha'av Goyle Al Yidei Ben. A father goes into galus. If his son killed someone b'shoigeg, V'aben Goyle Yidei Av Ha'kol Golen Yidei Yisrael. Everyone goes to galus, as again, and the case over here is, I think explain clearly, if the father Rahman al-Litzlan kills his son, or a son kills the father, there's galus. And anyone goes to galus for killing a yidvi. So And a yid, it goes to Yisrael Goylan al Yideihem, same thing. Chutz, Miger Taishav, Miger Taishav, and a girl al Yidei Ger Taishav. Says the Gemara, Ha'av, Goylan al Yidei Ben, that a father kills his son, or by accident, he goes to Gals. I, V'amid Yotzav Makkos B'nai de Gamir. Yotzav Makkos B'nai. But we said a father that hits his son does not go to Gals. Says the Gemara, the Gomer, it's about a case where the Sid learned, so he didn't have a chiyuv, the father to his son. We just said a moment ago, Amir Avagav the Gomer mitzvah kav it's a mitzvah. Says the Gemara, Bishul Yedin Agara. We're talking about an apprenticeship. The father is struck and hit the son, not with regarding to Torah. That's why he goes to Gals. Ask the Gemara, Shul Yedin Agara chiyusa. He's teaching him a trade, it's livelihood delamde. The father is a chiyuv that his son has a trade. Answers the Gemara, umnis achriti has a different trade, and therefore this was not a chiyuv. And we conclude, Ben Goylai de Av, Chulu Veramini asked the Gemara, Makanevish, brother Makaviv. It comes to exclude Makaviv, so I tell me this thing goes to Kolos. Amar Rav Kahana, like Kasha, Rav Shimon, Rabbana, Rav Shimon, Damar Chanik, Chomer, Meisayif. This brings us back to the Machlekes and Sanhedrin, which Misa is more Chomer. But the Rabbanon and Damri Saif is Chomer Mechanek. Hariga Aviv B'Shoigeg Shiga Saif Nen Alakapara. Rav Amar second there it's probably Chabura B'Aviv B'Shoigeg. Second doesn't mean to keep it the Mezid Ka Bar Katalu B'Shoigeg Nami Ligli B'Shoigeg also Shodig Alas. Kamashlan, that's the Chiddush of the Mishnah. We'll pick it up from here. B'siyata Dishmaya.